Ты установила переводчика?
Yes.
Не вижу почему-то каналы.
Сейчас I will check Amazon. Начать. Секунду. Все вроде есть. Так. Окей. Here we are live. And we'll start.
We live?
We are live. Earle. Yes.
Wow, just like that. Amazing. Well, then I should welcome everybody. I don't see our translators. There we go. Okay. Hey, Katerina, I'm going to look at you. When I'm going too fast, you can be my watchdog, slow everything down. And I want to thank all of our translators. It's just a tremendous amount of work. We've translated the manual for this program in 7 languages. And all of the warm-up materials, it's just amazing. So thank you. And then, everyone that helped put on today's event. So all the YSI staff and admin and everybody, thanks very much. And, everyone that showed up. I'm trying to scroll through the screens to see who you are. I'm hoping we can promote people to panelists. We can wave. I can't see you. Hopefully you can see me. Here's what we're going to do today. The primary objective today is to get excited about Geshe Michael's course. The YSI course we'll be putting on for the chapter 2, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, September 20 to 29. And we'll talk more about that today. That's the first objective today. The second is how did we get there? I want to review Hatha Yoga Pradipika 1. So to kind of remind us, for those that took us, how the text is going to flow and get us ready. Hold on. I got
Thank
so
you.
excited there.
Marina, can you please add the Spanish?
I see. Yes. Yes.
To flow into the second chapter of the Pradipika. Third thing we'll do is we're going to have an opportunity for a little bit of Q&A. So if you have some questions, type them into the chat and we'll get them translated. And, anything about the Pradipika that you want to ask, throw that in the chat at any point. And I've prepared a 5-hour class. I have so much that I want to share about this text. God knows how this will work, but we will have some time for a Q&A. And the last thing that I want to do today is thank you all for helping me celebrate my birthday. There is few things that are nicer than to share these teachings with all you friends on my birthday. So what a perfect way to start my day. So thank you for being here. Thank you everyone that's helping out. And let's get into it. A little tiny background on me. In case there's anyone out there that we haven't met, my name is Earle. It's my birthday. I studied this text with Geshe Michael 2000 and I don't know, 5 to 2009 or 2006 to 2008, something like that. Word by word from the Sanskrit. He taught us very, a little bit different than he'll teach in September. He went very slow, word by word through the Sanskrit. And I did the same with a teacher named Venerable Marut. We went word by word through the whole text. And then I also studied with a good friend, Swami Mukti Bodhananda, who wrote this book. Probably the best commentary on the text. She's amazing. We had her on last year. And I've studied the practices with her a little bit. And I've also studied the Shivananda lineage, all of the pranayama practices. And I've taught the text before, word by word from the Sanskrit. It took 50 classes to go through the whole text. And then I did a lot of the practices in 3-year retreat. So I feel like the Pradipika, the text, is a manual that I've used in my life, and I can speak to it not just theoretically. It's a practice manual. It's a text that you take with you into retreat, and the text itself, it's just a little bit of instruction, and then you just have to practice it. Short on instruction, long on practice. All right, let me check in. Sandra, Ekaterina, how am I doing? Yeah? Okay, 2 thumbs up. Cool. So that's the goals for today. That's a little bit of my study. Oh my God, we've already gone 10 minutes. I have so much I want to share about this book. Let's back up, though. Many of us have studied the Yoga Sutra. What's the difference between the Hatha Yoga Pradipika and the Yoga Sutra? Or Lady Naguma? Like, why should I study this? I get asked that a lot. I've studied DCI, studied ACI, studied Lady Naguma. Why go to this course? What's the difference? And I know many people, we're studying the Yoga Sutras together. And what's the difference? Let's look at that question by looking at the first verse. So if someone can, Maureen, if you can put the first PPT slide. Geshe Michael has moved more to showing images. I just want to look at the Sanskrit and the verse itself. So hopefully people are into Sanskrit and not fun images. Here we go. Cool. And if we can filter attendees into panelists, that'd be great. Let's do the next one. He starts his text saying, Shri Arinataya, Arinataya. Say Shri Arinataya. And my Sanskrit's terrible. Don't go to me for excellent Sanskrit pronunciation. I love it. I'm medium at it. I'm not great. I do my best. So the first word is one of my favorite Sanskrit words. And he's saying, Shri is like a word of respect. Arinata. Arinata is like it's like the first teacher. It's like the Adi, like the highest guru or the primordial teacher. And he calls him Shri. And so he bows down to the teacher and says, I'm going to dress these teachings in jewels. And last time Geshe said, it's like this he's acknowledging the teachings comes through a lineage, and he's just going to dress like they're perfect. Teachings are perfect. And he's just going to put on like a last few earrings or a bracelet. It's just going to make them a little bit more elegant. They're perfect, and I'm just going to add a jewel onto them. And so free is like, what would the most beautiful thing in the world be? What word would you use for the most amazing, beautiful thing in the world? And it's like the thing that's indescribable. How would you describe indescribable beauty? Like something so beautiful that there's no word to describe how beautiful. Like words don't quite match up to the beauty. Then that thing is Shri. So Shri is a word for something so beautiful that there's no word for it. Then you call that thing Shri. And so he's saying he bows down to his teacher with the word Shri. Something so beautiful that there's no word for it. And so, I wanted to take a moment as we start to thank Geshe Michael for, bringing these teachings to us, translating the text in his 3-year retreat, and taking the time to very carefully go through the whole text with us 20 years ago, and then doing it again for us, this year and next year. It's very, very difficult to get a good explanation of this text. There's people that can translate the text or talk about the text, but to have someone that can translate the text from Sanskrit and has taken the text into 3-year retreat or been practicing them for this text 20 years, but these practices in general for 50 years, I don't know, 60 years. So I don't know, feel very lucky that we're part of a lineage that comes through Geshe Michael for these teachings. So that's the first thing that the author does. He bows down to his guru, his teachers, calls them like the Sri Guru. Let's look at the next verse. Okay, cool. And again, pranamya. Pranamya is like to prostrate, to bow down to his Sri Guru, to the Guru. So he says, Swatmaramena yogina. Swatmaramena yogina. So the yogi, me, the yogi, Swatmarama, I bow down to my teacher. And I'm going to explain the practice of the sun and the moon. He's like, I'm going to teach the yoga, Hatha Yoga, but only as a means to get to Raja Yoga. So this is a really important distinction. I'm going to teach Hatha Yoga as a method for Raja Yoga. And again, he bows down to the teacher. So let's look at the author. The author is Swatmarama. And they figure it's not a real name. It's like a made-up name. He lived 500 years ago. And Swatmarama, arama means like to rest, to abide, to stay. Atma is like the essence or the true nature. And sva is the self. So his name is so cool. It's the guy who is abiding or resting in that true nature of the self, in the blissful true nature of the self. And that's his name. He's like the guy resting in the bliss of one's true nature. So that's his name. I always feel kind of jealous. Like if I was to meet him on the street, it'd be so awkward. He's like, I'm the guy resting in the bliss of my own true nature. I'd be like, yeah, I'm Earle. So he says, I'm going to teach you the science of yoga, of Hatha Yoga, as a means to get to Raja Yoga. So what's the difference? One sense of Raja Yoga is it's become synonymous with Patanjali, meaning Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which was much, much older text. It's almost 2,000 years old. And, the Yoga Sutra has become the core of yoga philosophy. We studied it for 2 years with Geshe Michael. It's an amazing text. And we need to learn the Yoga Sutras to understand yoga philosophy. The subject of that text is meditation, samadhi. And in it are the 8 limbs. So it's a very philosophical text. It doesn't have a lot of practical instruction. And so, I don't know, 1,000 years, 1,200 years, 1,300 years after Patanjali, Swatma Rama, he takes a bunch of practices and consolidates it into the text we're studying, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Many of the verses are just ripped off, taken from other texts, like the Amrita Siddhi, testing all my translators, the Yajnavalkya Smriti, the Dattatreya Sutra, these other famous yoga texts that talk about these yoga practices. And he kind of takes from a bunch of different texts and adds them to his. And it's the oldest text that really clearly talks about all of these Hatha Yoga practices. So it's the oldest, best compilation or source of the Hatha Yoga practices. Okay. So what do we mean by Hatha Yoga? I always think of it in relationship to a quote by Arjuna from the Mahabharata. And he's complaining to his teacher. He's complaining to Krishna. And he says, the mind is as hard to control as the wind. The mind is as hard to control as the wind. And he's just complaining. It's like, this meditation thing is hard. Like this spiritual practice thing, it's hard. Like I'm not getting anywhere. I'm trying to, work with my mind to control my mind. And my mind's crazy. My mind is constantly complaining and, grumpy and I don't know what to do about it. And so in one sense, if you had to generalize, the Raja Yoga practices is meditation, really. Whereas the Hatha Yoga practices are the physical practices of yoga. And so now we can use our body to help control the mind. So how does that work? We've talked about that in a lot of our courses. The basis of YSI philosophy is that there's a connection between, 5 things in the layers of the onion. Pancha kosha. Pancha, say pancha. Pancha is 5. Kosha is a covering. So it's like this idea of 5 aspects that cover ultimate reality. And, we talked about the connection between the body, being connected to the breath, and the breath being connected to the inner breath, the prana in the channels, and that prana is connected to our thoughts. And that connection is the understanding that connection is the essence of all of Geshe Michael's teaching. Understanding that the prana and the mind are connected is the fundamental understanding of all of the teachings on yoga. And so that then we know that the thoughts are then connected to seeds. And in the background to make all of that works is emptiness. Okay, so we can use our physical body, put ourselves in a nice asana position. That's going to have an effect on our breath. That's going to have an effect on the inner breath, the prana, which is going to have an effect on our mind, which is going to have an effect on our seeds, which is going to have an effect on our entire perception of reality, bringing us to the place of Swa-atmarama, resting in our own true nature. So that's the connection between the Hatha Yoga practices and what they lead to, which is Raja Yoga. And Swatmarama gives a bunch of definitions of Raja Yoga. He says Raja Yoga is samadhi, perfect meditation. He says Raja Yoga is the direct perception of emptiness. He says Raja Yoga is the end state of total perfection, state of an enlightened being. So we have all of these physical practices of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika that are aimed to bring us to a state of total perfection, Raja Yoga. And that's what the yogi Swatmarama is pledging to do. Okay. Let's look at the next verse. I'm impossibly behind on my 5-hour talk. Cool. I want to just briefly remind us about what we talked about the last class. Let's do the one before it. Should be one slide before that. Yeah. All right. Maybe all the translators can read this one out in their own language. I'll read it in English. Nah, you can read it. Ashesha tapa taptanam samashraya mato hata. Ashesha yoga yuktanam adaraka mata hata. This verse is super cool also. And it's talking about the yoga of the sun and moon, Hatha Yoga as a shelter for our practice. For why do we, and it talks about our motivation. Why do we come to these practices? Why should we go to this course in September? Why should we study this book? Because we're seared by the heat of life's pain. And this text, these practices are a hermitage. They're a retreat cabin. They're the balm, the cure for the pain of life. And so right away, he's talking about what do we need to do to even start to study this text? And we need to have a little bit of renunciation. We have to take shelter. We have to go for refuge and have some renunciation, which will bring us to this text. So it's a process of how do we prepare for Geshe Michael's teachings in September? We have to have a little bit of renunciation. We have to have a little bit of turning away from things that hold us back and the turning to things that uplift us. It's letting go of the things that renunciation is the letting go of the things that, even the good things that prevent us from going higher. And so Swamarama is saying that's our starting point. And it doesn't mean giving up the things that make us happy. It doesn't mean not having having renunciation for the things that make us happy, or like a relationship, or going to a hockey game, or having money. It's giving up the idea that those things must make us happy. It's giving up an idea. And so the highest form of renunciation is giving up a belief that things possess qualities independent of me. It's thinking that my version of me is the only version of me and it must be correct. And the same with everybody else, which leads me to all of my criticizing of other people. It leads me to all my criticizing of myself. So right away, he's saying, cultivate this idea of a shelter. Turn our minds to something higher. Turn away from this quest of happiness through external things. Move away from the happiness through material possessions and turn towards a spiritual life. And that brings us to the first path of accumulation, right? Where we're then focusing on creating the seeds, accumulating the seeds that'll allow us to have higher realizations. And so he uses the word yuktanam. So yoga yukta, where yuk is to join, it's to join ourselves. So we're joining to our yoga practice. Like, with a little bit of renunciation, then we can yoke ourselves to our yoga practice. All right. Sorry, we got some weather here. I just lost internet for a second. Bob, get ready to go.
I have the tiger ready. No worries.
Okay, so he's saying that Hatha Yoga is a shelter from life's pain. If we have some renunciation, it allows ourselves to yoke ourselves to our practice, which then is the doorway, it's the entryway into higher things. And that's how he starts his text. He bows down to his teacher. He talks about the lineage. And then he talks about the necessity of renunciation. And only then does he get into the text. What does he talk about in the text? What was some of the main things in chapter 1? I'm going to do this real quick. Let's look at the next verse. Yeah, he talks about 6 things that will make us succeed in yoga. Okay. He talked about 6 things that will make us fail, and 6 things that will make us succeed. And one of them was joy. And so I wanted to just talk about that briefly. One of the things we need in our practice, yes, we need renunciation, but we also need joy. And so take a moment and think, like, how am I doing? Am I joyful in my practice?
怎么样？我做的怎么样？我
What
在我的学习当中是否喜悦呢？是否开心呢？
sorry, Catherine, we got to get you back in a translator room. What is our practice of joy? Are we good? Catherine, you good? Okay, I'm going to assume we're all good. So we need to have renunciation. That's true. Letting go, let go, let go. But we also need to have something that brings us to the practice. And I think that's the joy. And I think that sometimes we have renunciation that we go too far. I've done that in my life for sure. It's like, oh, I can't do that thing I like anymore because it doesn't lead me to samadhi. It doesn't lead me to, to meditation. And so I give it up. And, okay, I won't, I was just water skiing this last week. It's my favorite thing in the world. And there was times in my life when I just gave up those things because they weren't yoga. And it didn't make me happier, and it didn't make me want to practice more. And so we also have to, like, no one wants to do practices that they're not joyful about. We don't have a firm resolve to do things we hate.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. And Marina, I was not in translation channel.
Yes, I will check now.
All right, we're going to take a brief pause.
Sorry for that.
Marina, give me a thumbs up when we're ready.
If you haven't seen Earle water ski, it's a sight to behold. Follow him on Instagram if you want to see his his water skiing videos.
Yeah, let's promote my Instagram. Yeah. Especially now that I've been doing stuff on it. Okay, are we good, Marina? Oh, not yet. We did? Thanks, Paul. I saw that comment.
So.
All right. Catherine, we good? Nope. We'll take another moment to talk about water skiing.
Earle, can you please relate water skiing to Hatha Yoga?
Yeah, it's just this. It's the joy.
Sorry, but you can go on. Peter will translate. She's in the channel.
Thanks, Maya Stack.
I'm sorry for that.
No, that's cool. Okay, so let's backtrack. Swatmarama's talking about, how does he start his text? One of the first things is, these are the things which will trash your practice. These will help them. What's one of the things that will help your practice? Have some joy. And so reflect. Am I a happier person with all my yoga practice? Am I getting happier and happier? And if the answer is no,
练习了瑜伽，我会变得越来越开心吗？
if the answer is no, there's a
如果
problem.
答案是不能，那么就有问题了。
I'm going to give a second. Ivo, I think you popped out of the translation channel. Rena, looks like you got a headache. Are you okay?
I think it's Chinese. It's Peter.
Oh, okay. So what's our practice to become happier? Because it should be part of our yoga practice.
我们为什么说练习要是快乐的？因为它应该是我们练习的一部分。
Something wrong with Chinese channel. Wait a minute.
Earl, the students in China want to be so close with you that they can't even stay in the interpretation channel.
All right. Persis,
Uh,
how we doing?
who
We
will
can do-
translate? Catherine or Pita? Sorry. Chinese translator.
Percy said that it will be Pita. First
Because
it was
Catherine
Catherine,
wrote-
but then they
wrote
changed
me.
to Pita.
Okay, let's try.
Okay, cool. So there's a couple of practices I personally have that are very specifically
我
about
自己是
increasing
有
the
几
joy in
个
my life.
练习，
And so
也增加了我生活当中的一些快乐。
Hey, Earl, maybe we go for sequential translation until we have a translator in the interpretation channel.
Sorry, I'm in the main channel again.
okay, I think Pita is in the translation channel.
Oh my god. Okay.
Okay, let's try it. Okay, enough about joy. That wasn't very fun. We should have a practice of joy, a specific, how am I creating joy in my life? How am I increasing bodhicitta? And we should debate that. I've had a million debates about emptiness. I've had a million debates about philosophy. And very, very few times has someone come up to me to debate, how are you generating love in your life? What are you doing to find joy in your practice? And Swamarama saying, the success of your practice is built on having joy in it, because we just won't be dedicated to something we don't love, that we don't have any joy in. Eventually we won't do it. All right, let's go to the next verse. And then just to remind us, he talked about yamas and niyamas, and he gave us 10 of each. So the list expanded from Patanjali to Swatmarama. And he adds patience to one of his lists. And I was wondering if that was the influence of Shantideva when he talks about the importance of patience, including the patience of our own practice. Our job is to worry about planting seeds, not when the seeds ripen. And so when we're doing something and we haven't seen the result in 10 days and we start complaining about it, that's not, we should have patience also with our practice, and to worry about, always worrying about the planting of the seeds. Our job isn't to worry about how they ripen, when and where. That's not something we can control. We can control putting the seeds in the ground. We can't control when they're going to pop up. And that's the basis of, so let's do one more verse. He talks about the yoga poses. So a massive part of the first chapter is talking about the asanas. And he talks about 15 yoga poses. And so it's so funny. It's so amazing in a yoga book to get to a place where they're actually talking about the yoga poses. I think we have, in the world today, people think of yoga and it's 90%, 99% the yoga poses. And when you get to reading the yoga texts, it's the exact opposite. It's like, oh my God, I finally found a text on yoga that's talking about the yoga poses. And in chapter 1 of the Pradipika, Swatmarama talks about 15 poses. And guess what? They're almost all meditation poses, right? So it's very interesting to see when we go back in time, if we go back far enough, the very word yoga itself means meditation. All right, let's move ahead. That's a very, very brief review of chapter 1. We're going to have to leave it there. There's 4 chapters of the Pradipika. The first one is asana. The one we're going to study is called Shat Karma and Pranayama. Okay. The third one is mudras and bandhas. And the 4th chapter is on samadhi and emptiness. That 4th chapter is very long, very beautiful, very intricate. And so Geshe Michael teaches a bit of the 4th chapter with the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Let's go down to slide 2.1. And we're going to do Q&As real quick. So if you've got a question, like maybe the question is, what's the 2nd chapter all about? I came here to learn it. Yes, back. There we go. Okay, this is the 1st verse of the 2nd chapter. And he's saying, look, once we get stable in the poses, once we eat healthy, we should start working on pranayama, controlling the breath, controlling the inner winds. And that's where we're going to break into September 20 to 29. We're going to start this chapter with a lot of pranayama and breathing techniques. And this is the chapter to learn this of all the yoga texts that I've seen. This book is going to talk about the pranayama practices, the cleaning practices, the practice on the capsules. It's all of the physical practices of yoga. And we did the asanas. Now we're going to kind of get into the more subtle practices. And this is the chapter to do it. It's, and like I said, it's amazing to have a teacher that can translate this material, but also has done it. It's not, this chapter is not something that you can teach just from a scholarly point of view. You need to have done the practices. And, you know, so it's amazing to have someone that has, you know, what Geshe Michael has done these for 50 years. And probably this is the last time he'll teach it. He's taught it once before. I don't think he'll teach it again. I've got about 5 other yoga texts I'm trying to get him to teach. So it's, I would say, likely the last time he'll go through this text to teach it. So to get it from the words of somebody that has translated it and practiced it, it's pretty rare and unique. It's very rare and unique. There is a million commentaries on the Yoga Sutra, and it's not like that for this text. And it's very rare to have a translator have actually done the practices. So when we study with Geshe Michael in September, we'll have the same structure. Geshe Michael will teach. We'll have yoga and meditation classes that support Geshe Michael's classes. I will give an amazing daily review of what Geshe Michael taught. And then Michael Johnson will teach a Sanskrit class, as he always does. So, and that's he makes Sanskrit fun, which is incredibly hard to do, and it's just a beautiful. I don't know if he's on this call, but he's such a joy to study with. He's such a joy to study from. And in a week, next week, him and I will do a sit down 1 hour talk about this text as a second part of these information sessions leading into the Pradipika, into Geshe Michael's course. So today we wanted to kind of preview what had happened in the past course to get us ready. Next week, also on Wednesday, 1 hour earlier, Michael Johnson and I will sit down and we'll talk about the second chapter itself. And so you can get a little bit more. I didn't want to get into the details of that chapter today. I wanted to remind us of, how did we get here? And we'll do that next week. So that'll happen in Sedona. You can come to Sedona and join us. It will happen online in 7 languages, which is amazing. Let's do the next verse, and then we'll do questions and answers. This is a verse that talks a little bit about what we can find in the text. Verse 22. It talks about 6 practices, 6 cleansing practices, and they're called the Shat Karma. So Shat means 6, Karma means action. So it's 6 actions, and there's 6 practices. I want to bring these up because I love them so much that I created a retreat for us to do these over New Year's at Diamond Mountain. And so this is one of the major topics of the second chapter, these 6 cleansing techniques, which I did a lot in retreat. And we will have a retreat in December to really practice all of the techniques that we'll learn in chapter 2. The pranayama practices, the capsule practices, but we'll also try some of these. So the first one is called, one of them is neti. So I think a lot of people know neti, where you pour water in one nostril, it comes out the other nostril. We'll do that. There's another one where you put a waxed thread and you put it up one nostril and then you pull it out your mouth. And if you do the water neti and you like it, the sutra neti is 100 times better. It's just a whole, you want to level your neti pot game. We'll learn how to do that into we'll 100x our neti pot game. There's another practice called the Doughty cloth. I don't know if I should even say this, but where you swallow a cloth and you just slowly swallow it into your stomach and then pull it back out. And you don't have to do it, but what happens is we learn in our culture how to clean the outside of our body, and no one teaches us how to clean the inside of our body. And these practices teach us how to clean the inside of our body, and I found them incredibly helpful for my yoga practice, because I didn't know how to clean the inside of my body, and it was a disaster. It was all junked up. And so the yoga practice, the pranayama practice, and these cleaning practices allow us to clean the gross inner body as well as the subtle inner body dirt. And so we'll do that. All right. Let's see if there's any questions. I need to look at the chat. So that's a very, very brief preview or review of what we've done. Okay, yeah. What do we need to do to prepare for chapter 2? Geshe Michael will teach over 10 days. So the main thing is to try to create space and schedule. You know, everybody's busy. Well, a lot of people I know are busy. There's endless teachings that we can go to, that we can access through the internet. I think the most important thing is to try to create space in our life that we can really focus on these teachings. The course is full. There's Geshe Michael's class, there's yet meditation, there's yoga, there's a review class, and there's Sanskrit. And not everybody is going to be able to do everything. There's time zone problems, there's work schedules, but one way to prepare is just the logistics of life. And that, I think, feeds into the idea of what Swami Rama said of having some renunciation. Getting clear on, oh yeah, that course sounds cool. And then all of the other things will start competing for our money, for our time, for our interest. And being clear on yoking ourselves to our yoga practice, yoga yuktam. If this is a priority, everything will start to now compete. Oh yeah, that thing sounds interesting. And then the calendar is going to close in on us. And so I would getting my motivation clear and to just start to block out that time and put up a wall. And then to really be able to focus as much as possible on Geshe-la's teachings. That would be my suggestion. Physically, like for the retreat we'll do over New Year's, there'll be a whole different set of physical preparations, improving our diet, having a practice. We'll guide people in how to show up for that retreat in a very different way. For these teachings, just be ready to focus to drink the nectar of Geshe Michael's teachings. Is Buddhism part of yoga? What is the relationship? You could say yes and no. There are yoga teachings in the Buddhist tradition. So that's one answer. Yoga is a huge word. We'd really have to talk about, what we mean by that word. Because there's so many different kinds of yoga. But then we can also think of yoga as its own separate philosophical school outside of Buddhism. So we can also conceive of it like that also. So yes and no. Buddhism contains many, many, many of the classical components that we think of as yoga. And we also can think of yoga as a separate school outside of Buddhism, like that. Why learn these weird practices? Because they're not weird. It's weird that we think they're weird. And most of them aren't that weird. I don't know. I don't think most people think of pranayama as weird. It's becoming so integrated into our culture, and now we can learn it from a real, authentic source. Not only from the text, but from the teacher. When it gets really weird, swallowing cloths and stuff, there's just going to be a weird, freaky subset of people that really want to go deep and understand all of Hatha Yoga. And it's all, Hatha Yoga is aimed at Raja Yoga. All goes back to that. Why am I doing any of that? Why am I doing these weird breathing exercises? Because there's a connection between our body, our prana, and our thoughts. And so we're using the physical practices to see emptiness directly. And that's it. That's the reason. No other reason. I mean, we can get on our yoga mat and get some, my body feels better, I get stronger, I get more flexible. But really, I get on my yoga mat to be more kind because my prana is connected to my thoughts. I get on my yoga mat because Hatha Yoga is bringing the winds from the side channels in the center channel and moving from anger, desire, ignorance to compassion, love, bliss. Okay? And so our Hatha Yoga practices, no matter how weird or freaky or normal they are, they're all aimed at that. They're all aimed at love. They're all aimed at compassion. They're all aimed at wisdom. And that's it. That's what yoga is about. Somebody asked, can we have the same results of Hatha as we do yoga practice? It's not my experience. I think if there was a real valid tradition and an understanding of how that could work, then yeah. Theoretically, it's empty. It could work. Great question. Love it. Is yoga advised to practice in Christianity or Hinduism? Yeah, I think again, yoga, this will be the last question. When we think of yoga, part of yoga could be prayer. So does yoga own prayer? Does Christianity own prayer? Does Buddhism own prayer? Does Hinduism own prayer? You know, we all get to share in that practice. Yoga is meditation. Is it okay to contemplate as a Christian? Of course. My friend said, I learned she meditated. She was Christian. I said, oh, you meditate? She said, of course. You know, after you talk to God, you have to shut up and listen. And so, yeah, yoga in its essence doesn't have to be related to any sort of theology or any sort of God. You can find that in yoga if you want. You know, there's different streams of yoga that are quite theistic or are not theistic, but the essence of yoga like transcends religion for sure. Yoga is not religion. You can have a religious flavor of yoga, but yoga is not religious. All right. My friends, we have already run out of time. Here's a whole bunch of stuff. One, come back next week if you want to hear more about what the content of the second chapter is. And Michael and I will talk about that more specifically. 2, sign up for the warm-up course if you want. And that will have some cool stuff that will also prepare you for the Geshe Michael's course in September. That would have been a good answer. So it'll talk about gosh, what is in that? Oh, we'll give an example of some of the breathing techniques and the benefits of breathwork. So that warm-up course is designed to kind of streamline people into Geshe Michael's course and to get people to see if, hey, I'm thinking about this, I'm not quite sure. Check out the warm-up course, see what it's all about, and it's free. You'll get, messages about next week's email. You'll get some cool digital backgrounds and screensavers and stuff like that. So next week, we'll be talking with Michael Johnson about the content of the second chapter. There's a whole warm-up course that also is kind of, want to find out more information, want to know what this is all about, check out the warm-up course. And then the third thing, the most important thing, is to sign up for Geshe Michael's teachings. September 20 to 29. The early bird, I'm pretty sure, ends tomorrow. So if you want to save a little bit of money, jump on it. They will put the link up in a second. And that's, you can, like I said, everyone is welcome to come to attend those teachings live in Sedona. And I know that's difficult for 99% of you. So we work through distributors. You can contact your distributor through our website. There's the QR code. And then, don't miss the opportunity to hear these teachings from Geshe Michael. Like I said, I suspect for the last time, it's kind of up to us. He'll have taught it twice, and then it's up to us to keep teaching it. And, hopefully we can convince him to teach some other yogic texts. And to have somebody teach it that's translated it and practiced it for decades, super rare and super important, because we want someone that's done the practices. You can't teach this text unless you've done the practices. It's not like other texts, because the instructions in the text are so short. And so if you haven't done them extensively, how are you going to teach them? So most of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it's just translated from a scholarly perspective. It's just people translating the Sanskrit that haven't necessarily spent decades and decades doing the practice. And that's really what we want in a teacher, especially for this text. So there's the QR code for the full course in September. And, we can yoga yuktanam, yoke ourselves, connect ourselves to these teachings and to that lineage, and to practice our Hatha Yoga to bring us to Raja Yoga. Practice the physical practices of Hatha Yoga to bring us to the realizations of Raja Yoga. That's what YSI is all about. That's what we're trying to do. And we appreciate being on this journey with you. I want to thank all of our translators. I want to thank Marina for scrambling around when translators get kicked out of translators room and setting everybody up, and everyone that, it's an incredible amount of work to have an hour of me going blah, 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 blah. And obviously thanks to our translators for translating my blah, 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 blah. And lastly, want to thank you for celebrating my birthday with me. There's so many great friends on this call. I love you all so much. And I look forward to studying with you more. Thank you.
Hey, Earle. We got a gallery view, and I'm going to ask everyone to unmute and join in a very beautifully sounding happy birthday song for Earle Birney.
I was trying to go over so that we didn't have to
Nope, you're not getting out of it, man. This is the most planned part of this promotional event. So please don't let me sing alone. Unmute your mics. Thank you, Earle, so much for everything that you do for so many. You're a great teacher and a great friend to people all over the world. So happy birthday, and we wish you many, many, many more. So let's sing.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday
Birthday to you.
Happy
Birthday
Happy
birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Earle. Thank you so much
Thanks,
for
Aya.
teaching.
All right. See
Thanks,
y'all
Happy
later.
birthday.
Thanks,
Happy
everybody.
birthday.
生日快乐！
This is the best way to start my birthday.
生日快乐。
生日快乐！
生日快乐。
Thank you all so much. I hope to see you back here in a week with MJ, and we'll have a fun discussion about the text, and then we'll be prepared for Geshe Michael's teaching in September. Thank you.
Thank you. Please stay.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you.